Welcome, everyone. Thanks for joining us tonight. My name is Diane Dahoney. I am the Community Service Librarian at the Paul Sawyer Public Library. And we're just thrilled that you're joining us tonight on this for another virtual program. Spring is here almost. Saturday will be the first day of spring. And I know you all are probably as excited as I am. And springtime, one of the things that means is we're going to be seeing lots of birds. I know I have lots to learn about that, and looks like a lot of folks here in this community are interested as well. We've got a large group on here tonight, and we're just thrilled that all of you are joining us. And let's see here. Tonight, we are welcoming Noor Salam from the Frankfort chapter of the Audubon Society to present backyard bird identification. And assisting her tonight in the chat will be Lisa Gabbard. I think Noor is going to tell you a little bit about how you can submit any questions that you may have, because we do have a larger group tonight. If you haven't already done so, if you don't mind to go ahead and mute your microphone, we'd really appreciate that. And again, I just thank you so much on behalf of the library for joining us. And I'm going to turn it over to Noor. Thanks, Noor.
Thank you so much, Diane. Can you hear me okay? Yeah, awesome. I am so glad everyone was able to join us tonight. And I'm so looking forward to sharing with you my passion for bird watching. Before we get started here, I want to do just a little bit of housekeeping. We here at the Frankfort Audubon Society miss doing guided bird walks with you. We miss engaging with you, but we're going to do it through Zoom today. And hopefully we can do that in person soon. So I would really love if you paid attention to the chat option in Zoom. And that way, throughout this webinar, you can actually ask questions and answer quizzes. Yes, there will be quizzes. And so type in what you need to in here, and Lisa will do her best to relay it to me when the time's appropriate. So please, please interact with us. That's what we're hoping to do tonight. And we're looking forward to interacting with you in person soon when that's possible. This webinar is supposed to be 1 hour. And I just want to make sure that you know the birds we're going to talk about here are the most common, most likely to be found in your backyard. It doesn't mean other things can't show up in your backyard. So always use a field guide to be confident in what you're identifying. And, we're going to also listen to some birds. And again, I'm going to try to make you listen to the most characteristic sounds each bird makes, but some birds can make multiple different sounds. It doesn't make it easy, but I'm going to try to teach you some little tricks to remember the visuals and the audio. And as Diane told you in the beginning, this is going to be recorded for educational purposes. So let's dive in. Before we dive in, I wanted to tell you a little bit about anatomy. Now, this is not terribly crucial for this webinar, but it's gonna launch you on your bird watching journey if you do these very small details. So in a bird, we usually have the crown, the bill, the throat, and there's something called the nape, which is kind of equivalent to the back of your neck. We have the mantle. This area is kind of the upper back area. And then the rump is the lower back area. And then we have the tail, the belly, and the flanks, and the sides and breast. And there's a little bit more, and that's it. So this small bird right here is a sparrow. And they have this very important feature that will help you identify birds, and it's called wing bars. It's these two small white lines that are highlighted in this picture on the wing. Next, we have something called the lores. This is the space between the bill and the eye. And in this bird right here, it's yellow. So it's a very, very obvious lure. Next, we have something called the eye ring. Now, just to be clear, this bird does not have an eye ring, but it's an important feature for looking and identifying birds. So usually the eye ring is a very distinct, differently colored feather ring around the eyes. Most commonly, it's like a white eye ring. And so this one does not have an eye ring, although it's a very important feature for identifying birds. And then lastly, we have something called an eye stripe. This bird does have one. It's this little black line going behind the eye. And so these are very neat details. You don't have to remember all of these, but maybe one day you'll be identifying a bird and you'll remember this and it'll help you in some way. So I hope that this is helpful in some way or another today or in the future. Let's talk about something even more important than the visuals and the details. This is the size. So when we're identifying birds, it's really important that we kind of estimate how big they are, you know, in relative to other birds. That's kind of the quickest way to do it. So this bird we just saw and just now is a sparrow, and that's one of the smallest birds you'll see. Those are those are about the same size as, you know, the little sparrows you see in a parking lot or in your backyard. Then the next size category is the robin, and that's represented in the next silhouette on the graphic. So robins are, you know, slightly bigger, and then we have the crows, which are much bigger. Finally, we have geese. So when you're identifying birds, think to yourself, is it bigger than a sparrow, but smaller than a robin? Or is it bigger than a robin? Or is it just as big as a crow? That will help you narrow down your options when you have no idea what you're seeing. And we're going to talk about those sizes throughout the presentation. And one quick thing before I forget, you know, for the sparrow and the robin, I'm sure you've seen them around, but if you're just now starting to look at birds, a really good way to remember how big they are is, you know, a little sparrow could probably fit in one palm of your hand easily. A robin, on the other hand, that would probably, it could fit in one palm of your hand, but it would fit comfortably in two palms of your hand. So that's like kind of like a good visual of how big they actually are. But I'm sure you're going to see them soon in your backyard. The robins especially are very active right now. So let's talk about year-round residents in your backyard. So those are the birds that don't migrate and are here throughout the winter and spring and summer and fall. The robin, very active right now, has a reddish breast and belly. They have a black and gray head and back. And actually, if maybe you didn't know this, you can tell males from females in robins. The males have a very, very dark black head. If you look at females, it's a very subtle difference, but the females have a gray, lighter head than the males, excuse me. They also both have yellow bills. And those birds eat worms. That's why you see them hopping in the backyard on the ground and feeding on the ground. They're actually looking for worms. And a really cool fact about them is that robins can make 3 successful broods in one season. Like, what is a brood? It's a nest of eggs. So they can do 3 different nests of eggs in one season. That's kind of fascinating. What do these birds sound like? They actually are whistlers. So when I'm going to talk about bird sounds, I'm going to kind of say what type of sounds do they make. Some birds whistle, some birds screech. The robins are whistlers. And I'm going to play something right now for you. So listen to their whistles. Let's do that. So as I just mentioned, uh, this is a whistle, and if you noticed, it's kind of a repetition of the same whistles in a sequence. So keep that in mind next time you hear them in your backyard. Next, we have the cardinal. They're beautiful birds. They're very common in backyards. And as you can see, the male, well, so the sizes, in terms of size, they are a little bit smaller than a robin, but bigger than a sparrow. And they have black lures, both the male and female. What is a lure? If you remember, that's the space between the eyes and the bill. So the lures are black, and so is the throat. And the males have a crimson red crest and body, while the females are brown, but if you look closely, the tips of their feathers and of their crest are little red. Um, they are also whistlers. And I'm gonna play this song right now. Keep in mind, look for this kind of slow introduction and then very fast ending. So it's not like the robin where it's just a repetition of the similar whistles together. There's kind of a change in pace usually. Let's hear that out together. Wonderful. Um, so moving on, we're gonna hear those again later. These birds are the state bird of Kentucky, so they're very special. And this is a really fun fact. I've actually seen this myself. When during the breeding season, when the males are trying to attract the females to make a nest together, they actually show the female that they can be good caretakers to the chicks. So what they do is they will be feeding together, males and females, but instead of independently feeding, the males will pick up the seeds and feed the adult female to show her they can do this. So it's like they're saying, look, I can be a good father. So I thought that was pretty neat. And when I saw it myself, I was like, wow, that's pretty cool. And unlike what the University of Louisville might tell you, the basketball team might tell you, those birds do not have teeth. This logo is really cool, but technically those birds don't have teeth. Remember that. The blue jay is a really cool bird, and they are about the size of a crow. They have white breasts and flanks, and they have a blue back with beautiful details of white and black feathers. They can mimic what hawks sound like, and I have been tricked before by them. So, but let's hear what they usually sound like. This is an exception. They usually have a screech type. They're not whistler, they kind of screech. And I'm sure you've heard them before, and you might be like, that sounds really familiar. So let's hear that out right now. All right. I hope that next time you hear this, you will know what this bird is. It's a simple call, and it doesn't vary very much. Next, we have the European starling. This is another bird that can mimic hawks. And at this point, every time I hear a hawk, what I think is a hawk, I'm always suspicious just because of, the starlings and the blue jays and how they can really mimic hawks really, really well. I've been tricked many times. So this European starling has a yellow bill, and they have dark purple green feathers. They're also iridescent, so they depending on how the light is shining on them, they'll like vary in color. They're really beautiful. They usually found in large groups, and they feed on the ground. So you can look for them in your backyard, but sometimes just on the sides of the road or very urbanized area. They're very well adapted birds. They make a sound that honestly, it sounds like it's outside of this world. It's very, very unique. Here, listen to that. So it sounds like they're chattering and making multiple sounds at the same time. It's very, very, very unique. Moving on, the mourning dove is probably a very common visitor in your backyard. And they have a grayish brownish body with black spots on their wings and little black spots kind of on the cheek as well. Those birds are able to stockpile seed in their crop. Now, what is a crop? A crop is a kind of a sac in the digestive system. And when they eat those seeds, they can either digest them or just keep them in their crop for later. That's actually something really amazing about them. And they are named kind of after their sound. They make a sad, kind of a sad song. That's why they're mourning doves with M-O-U. They're kind of sad sounding birds. See if you can hear that. So if I were to describe this sound, I would say it's a cooing sound. It's neither a whistle or a screech. It's kind of just a coo, a soft coo sound. Now, a small bird with a lot of personality. They're all about the size of a sparrow, maybe slightly bigger. Carolina wrens have a brown reddish back and an orange breast and belly. They have a white eyebrow, and they sing so much. It was found that one male sang the same song 3,000 times in one day. They're hardworking birds with a lot of personality. Their song is really interesting, and it has been said that it sounds like because it's made up of 3 syllables repeated very fast. People have described it, they say it sounds like someone is saying Germany very fast. So Germany, Germany, Germany. Or tea kettle. So tea kettle very fast, repeated very fast. I didn't make these up, and some of my friends have said that this doesn't sound like tea kettle or Germany. So I think you should choose a word with 3 syllables that you think sounds like what they're saying. And that's a good way for you to remember their sound. So you listen to their song and see if you can identify 3 syllables that you can easily remember. Doesn't have to be Germany, doesn't have to be tea kettle, it's whatever you feel like. Let's hear that out. So hopefully you heard those 3 syllables. And I hope you found a word that actually is a good mnemonic to remember them. They are very loud. They're a small, very loud bird, and I think that's just super cute. I just bombarded you with a lot of information, so let's take a little break. And I really want to engage with you, and I want to hear from you. I love hearing stories of how people fell in love with bird watching. So in a few words, please use the chat and just tell us, if you remember, like, what were you doing or what happened when you first realized you love to watch birds? I'm gonna tell you my story while you do that, and I'm gonna read your stories later after we finish. I'm someone who's always loved wildlife and been interested in wildlife. I've watched countless nature documentaries as a kid. I even went to school for a biology degree, but I wasn't a bird watcher. And one day 3 years ago, I was walking in a park with some friends in New Orleans, and we had to stop everything we were doing because there was hundreds of ducks. Specifically, those were black-bellied whistling ducks that were making a display. So that was a courting display. The males were courting the females, and the way they were doing that was fascinating. So the males were gathering in large groups on the side of the lake, on the bank of the lake, and then they would just keep gathering and gathering, and then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, they would all jump at the same time and make a huge splash. There was no telling when they would jump. They just all made that decision at the same time. And after they splashed, they would make like this little dance in the water. And our jaws were dropped, and that's all we were watching for like a whole hour. And it was absolutely fascinating. And that's ever since then, I've been in love with bird watching. So that's my story. I hope I can hear yours. And I'm gonna keep talking about birds, and I hope you could feel free to ask questions. Lisa, do we have any questions at this point in time?
I haven't seen any specific questions, but someone made
Okay.
a really interesting comment, and I apologize that I didn't jot down the person's name, but she said that the blue jay sound kind of freaked her dog out because her dog had been attacked by blue jays. And I wondered if you could say maybe a little something about blue jays being a little aggressive and why that might have happened.
Okay, that's unheard of, but yes, I think a lot of birds are territorial. So, they have a certain territory. Obviously, they don't know the boundaries of, what's your backyard or what's not. And, they're just trying to defend their territory. Maybe they were protecting their young. We don't know, but I'm sorry that happens. And yeah, I mean, it's a lot of birds can be territorial and it's normal behavior. So I hope that doesn't happen again. Sorry to hear about that. All right. Well, on to the American goldfish. Both the males and females are brownish with black wings. So I say both the male and female are like that in winter. But wait and see what happens in the spring. They get these gorgeous colors and they become bright yellow. And the males are always brighter than the females. So here in this picture is a male. They become bright yellow with black wings and a black forehead area. Those birds can weave their nests, and they weave them so well it can hold water. Yeah, it's really, really awesome. And they make this distinctive sound when they're flying. They usually fly in groups. It's very rare to me to see a goldfinch flying by itself. They usually fly in groups of 2 or 3, sometimes even a lot more. They make this very distinct sound when they're flying that sounds like potato chip, if you're saying it very fast. Let's hear that flight call. It's called a flight call. And they use it to communicate with each other while they're flying. So that was the American goldfinch flight call. Next, we have the Carolina chickadee. They are about the size of a sparrow, and they have a black crown, so that's the top of the head, and a black throat. They also have gray wings. And those are, as I said, we're still in the section of year-round residents. So the Carolina chickadees hang out in the same area in the winter and in the summer. But in the winter, especially harsh winters, they have to work a lot harder and spend a lot more energy. And so they have been known to eat 20 times more food in the winter than in the summer. They are named after the sound that they make. So that sound is supposed to be chickadee dee dee dee. And let's hear what that sounds in reality, because I make a pretty bad rendering of it. Let's hear it. Oops, sorry, wrong one. Here we go. If you can't hear the supposed chickadee, just think of what the sound is. It's like a little chatter followed by a repeated sound, like the D D D or Z Z Z. Whatever it sounds to you is what's best. So it doesn't have to be chickadee, but just try to remember a word that kind of fits what you think it is. Next, we have the Tufted Tip Mouse. They're also about the same size as a Caroline chickadee, or a sparrow, or slightly bigger than a sparrow. They have a gray body and crest, and they have orange flanks, as you can see here in this picture. So that's their sides. They're little tricksters because when a predator is nearby, so like a hawk or something, they'll make an alarm call. A lot of birds make alarm calls to tell the other birds that there's a danger nearby. But what these birds do is they'll make the alarm call, but they'll make a fading alarm call. So it will start off like really high in volume and it will fade. And that makes the predator think that the bird already escaped and is really far away. So I thought that was genius. And what their most common sound is, the song that sounds like they're saying Peter, 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 very fast. They are whistlers. So listen for that whistle we're about to hear. If you did not hear Peter, 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 that's totally fine. It's actually a whistle, and it's the same whistle repeated about 3 times, and each repetition is about 2 small syllables. So 2 small syllables repeated about 3 times, and with not much variation. It's very monotone. The house sparrows. I call them the city sparrows because you'll next time you go to the grocery store or any kind of parking lot, you will probably see some house sparrows jumping around in between the cars. They also visit bird feeders, depending on where you live. So they're very well adapted to urban areas. So if you live in the city or near the city, you might see house sparrows easily. They're very common and very well adapted. Notice the black throat on the male on the left. That's a pretty distinctive feature. And oops, sorry about that. And the female that you can see on the right is does not have a black throat. She has like a pretty plain breast and belly, but the backs of both the male and female have little details and streakings. Let's talk about another type of sparrow. This is the song sparrow, and they also can visit backyards in urban areas or somewhat urban areas. They're little less adapted to urban areas than house sparrows, so they can be in good habitats as well as urban habitats. So they have a lot of streaking. So those are the little dots that you see on their breast area. And look for this dark patch right in the center of the breast area. That's a pretty important feature in the song sparrow. They have a brown eye stripe. So that's the line going right behind the eye. And they're the most widespread sparrow in North America. So they occur in all the states except for Hawaii. Their song is, it always has 3 introductory notes, and then it kind of goes mumble jumble after that. So it's let's hear an example of that. So yeah, so the first few notes are pretty well defined and clear. It's usually 3 to 4, and then they warble or do a little bit of chatter after those three notes. So remember those 3 notes at the beginning, and you'll be good to go. Next, we have the house finch. The males have a reddish face and breast, while the females are just mostly brown. They both have streaking on their frontal area, and they are whistlers, and the sound that they make is very bubbly. It's a very happy, bubbly song. I don't have a very good way of describing it, but let's hear it out together anyway. So notice how it with the robin, if you remember, it was very very good repetitions of the same whistle. And we saw in other birds, there was a pattern. This one doesn't really have a pattern. It's kind of just whistles, and very, very bubbly and happy whistles. That's the only way I can describe it in my experience. Now we have one of my personal favorites because of their very sweet song. The white-throated sparrow, here you can see in this picture, they have winged bars. So those are the 2 lines, 2 white lines on their wings. They have a white throat, very, very distinct white throat, and yellow lores. So lores, remember, that's in between the bill and the eye. They also have a black eye stripe and also black lines on their crown, so the top of their heads. They nest near or on the ground. And what's so special about this song? It sounds like they're saying, "Oh, sweet Canada, Canada, Canada." And again, I didn't make these up. And I hope you like their song because it's very, very sweet. And once you remember it, you probably will not forget it. It's very, very beautiful. So there's a little bit of an introduction here in the whistle, and then kind of 3 little repetitions after that. All right, next we have a quiz. Are you ready for the quiz? So hop on your chat box and see if you can answer this, what this bird is. I'm gonna display it here for about 5, 6, 7 seconds and let you type in the answer. We saw this bird. Lisa, how are we doing?
Well, several people were so quick that they actually put in duck because your little silhouette right before you pulled up the chickadee picture.
I should not have put that. Was like a background from
they were on it.
PowerPoint suggested this background to me, and I was like, "That's cute." Okay,
that is cute.
Yeah, but no, let us know what this bird is.
A lot of people are putting chickadee. Several people actually clarified Carolina chickadee because
yes,
some folks may know there is another chickadee that's very similar looking. It ranges a little north of here, the black cap chickadee, which
exactly.
When I was growing up, we were talking earlier about how we got into birding. When I was growing up, my mother, who is from Ohio, but was raising me here in Kentucky, always called it a black cap chickadee because, of course, in Ohio, that's what they had. And it wasn't
Yeah.
until I was an adult that I realized Kentucky had the Carolina rather than the
different
black
one.
cap. But
Yeah.
there's a whole bunch of people in the chat who got it. So
I am so glad.
you're doing
Awesome.
a good job.
So proud of you all. And just as Lisa said, there's another species of chickadee that looks exactly like it, but you don't have to worry about that because they don't occur in Kentucky, and it's called the black-capped chickadee. But you all guessed it, it's the Carolina chickadee. Next we have, all right, and then it shows here, it's a Carolina chickadee. Next we have an audio quiz. So see if you can guess this one. I hope people already started typing their answers in. And if you're still thinking about it, I'm going to show you the birds. And hopefully at this point you can name it and remember their sound.
Yep, there's a whole bunch of folks putting in blue jay.
Amazing. I'm so proud. I couldn't be happier. All right. Moving on. See, we have about 20 minutes left. So I'm going to have to, if you're, there are a lot of quizzes that you can do if you still feel like you needed more time or wanted to practice more. I will give you a lot of good resources for quizzes at the end that you can do by yourself online. All right. Let's talk about spring visitors. And so these birds will migrate up north about right now, and they will come visit your backyards for the spring and summer, and then return to South America for the winter. One very beautiful bird that is a spring visitor is the Indigo Bunting. The males are just blue. They're just entirely blue and have a gray bill, and the females are just entirely brown. There's not very important features there. It's just a little brown bird, and those birds can migrate at night. Their song is it's kind of little parts of the song repeated twice. So they repeat the same thing twice, over and over. Let's hear that out. So they are whistlers, as you just heard, and hopefully you paid attention to this duo. They always do 2 times the same sound. Next, we have oh, no, let's stop right here. I know we've seen a lot of little brown birds in this presentation so far, and it's easy to look at them in pictures, but what if they're in your backyard? They're moving very fast. It's very confusing. I had a hard time learning all these little brown birds. So I'm going to try and give you little tricks and tips on how to actually know what you're looking at, even though they almost all look like little brown birds. Now, as a warning, the Carolina wren can be considered a little brown bird in theory, but I'm only going to talk about little brown birds that eat seeds. This little Carolina wren mostly feeds on insects, and they're actually not truly brown. They're kind of reddish brown. So, if you look at them long enough, the Carolina wrens, if you look at them long enough, you'll realize they are so fidgety and they move so very fast, unlike any other little brown bird that we're going to talk about. They're very, very bubbly and energetic. Let's see what those little brown birds are about. So I want you to think of this as a series of simple questions that will either get you the identification or just eliminate the birds that you're trying to guess. So if the little brown bird has a black throat, it's a pretty sure sign that this is a house sparrow male. Now, if they have a white throat, just like the name says, it's a white-throated sparrow. There are obviously a lot of other features that we talked about, but these are distinctive features that will differentiate them from other birds. And one last thing, if this little brownish bird has head or red breast, then they are most likely a house finch. And I know I'm gonna give you these tips and tricks, but just remember, these are the most common birds. And it's very likely that you'll get something else, but just these are just the most common birds. And if you live in the city or near the city, it's very, very likely the series of questions will be very helpful for you. Now, what if the answer is no to all three of these questions? What do we do then? There's another way to keep going. The next question is, do they have streaks on their breasts? So these little spots on their breast. If the answer is no, then it narrows it down to it's either an indigo bunting female or a house sparrow female. And if you're in the middle of winter, even more narrowing down. It's definitely not an indigo bunting female because they only visit in the spring. But right now in the spring, you might have both options. And so how do you tell them apart? Ask yourselves, what's on their back? Do they have streaks on their back? If the answer is yes, then it's a house sparrow female. The answer is no, then it's an indigo bunting. What if they do have little dots on their breasts? That means then you're narrowing it down to the house finch female or the song sparrow. And again, how do you tell these two apart? Because they're both year-round residents. Then look at their heads. Look at their head area, and you may need a pair of binoculars for this or not if your feeder is really close to the window. So look at their heads and look at the song sparrow. They have dark stripes going through their eyes and their crown, while the house finch female, their heads are pretty well uniform with the rest of their body. There's no difference between their heads and the rest of the streaking on their body. So remember this kind of elimination pattern to help you with the little brown birds, which are the most challenging for all birders to identify. Let's talk about some more spring visitors. This is a very beautiful bird. It's called the rose-breasted grosbeak, and the males have a reddish breast with a black head and black back, and they have white flanks and bellies. The females on the right have a white eyebrow, and they're usually mostly brown. They have large beaks, very large beaks, very different from sparrows or any other birds that we've seen. The males, interestingly, will help the females incubate the eggs and keep them warm. And they are whistlers. They're also whistlers. And remember the robin with their little whistly repetitive notes? Well, think of this as a robin that took professional singing lessons. They just sound way better and very, very beautiful. It's just a very rich sound, just like a robin. It was just very rich sounding. So that's it. There's our robin with extensive singing lessons, and that's the rose-breasted grosbeak. It's very hard to tell these different nuances between the songs. So just, use your binoculars and try to use the visual and audio to remember the song at the same time. Now we have a bird that's been very active in my backyard recently, the common grackle. They have very beautiful blue heads that are very, very shiny. They have iridescent feathers, and they have brownish bronze bodies. They have yellow eyes as well. And if you thought scarecrows were to scare away crows, well, think again, because grackles are the #1 corn eaters, and they will eat more of the corn crops than the crows. So it should be called scare grackle, not scarecrow. They make a sound that is very distinct. It's not as confusing as all these different whistles we've heard. It sounds like a rusty gate. Let's hear that. Hopefully this was a pretty unique one compared to the others. Let's keep going and see what's next. So now we have the eastern bluebird. These birds will visit your backyard with some encouragement. Maybe if you put a little bluebird box, and remember these boxes need to be checked and cleaned every year. So these birds have blue heads and wings. They have brown to rufous bodies and sorry, breasts and flanks. They have a small area of their belly that is also white. They feed on insects, and that's why they will not, necessarily visit your backyards without a little nesting area. They have a whistling type of song. Let's hear that. And last but not least, we have the ruby-throated hummingbird. The male that you're seeing is that's why they're called ruby-throated, because their throats are very bright red. But just as a heads up, this is the ideal light for you to see this. Usually they will look like this. So it's just that depending on how the light, what angle the light is hitting them, the red feathers will shine. But most times, most likely, they will just look slightly darker than the rest of their bodies. But they're still considered ruby-throated hummingbirds, and they're the most common hummingbird in Kentucky. The females that are shown on the right don't have this colored throat. What's really, really interesting about them is that they weave their nests with spider silk. And they have little squeaky sounds that we're going to hear right now. I have noticed them to be attracted to anything that is colored red. I had a bird feeder that, it wasn't a hummingbird feeder, it was just a regular bird seed feeder that was red, and I've had 2 different hummingbirds check it out thinking it was a flower or something. So when you put very colorful sugar water containers, they will definitely come visit you. All right, time for another quiz. I'm gonna display this picture right now, and whenever you're ready, just type in your best guess. So what's this bird? And it is a spring visitor. So Lisa, did everyone ace this quiz?
They really did. Just as soon as the picture went up, they started
Wow.
in.
Good job. Okay, that's awesome. I'm so glad people are responding and getting it right and giving it a try. Okay, and next we have an audio quiz. Let's do that. All right. Okay. So if you don't remember this by now, remember the rusty gate, the sound that a rusty gate will make. And I will show you what bird this is, and I'll let you name it. And drum roll, this is the common grackle.
Yep. Whole bunch of people got it again.
I'm so glad. And unfortunately, that's the end of our presentation. I'm so into it right now. I want to do more, and I'm hoping actually that we'll do some different topics. We were talking about doing something about hummingbirds or woodpeckers. So please let us know in the chat what you're most interested in hearing about in the next presentation. And I would like to just thank the Paul Sawyer Library for hosting this for us. I'm so glad they did it and organized it. And I want to point you to two different very important resources. The allaboutbirds.org. This is where I got my photos and audio. Same thing with the audubon.org bird guides. And if you have, we're going to take some questions here. But if you think of your questions later on tonight or tomorrow when you see some birds in your backyard, feel free to send us an email. As you can see here, Frankfort Audubon Chapter @gmail.com, and follow us on Facebook for more events. And I'm going to post some resources here. We're going to send you an email with those links so that you can quiz yourself and download some cool visuals. And I'm going to go to Lisa here now and maybe get some questions about some birds you saw or heard.
This isn't a question.
Yeah.
A couple people made some interesting observations, and then I do have one question for you. But someone noted that mourning doves sound a little bit like owls, and before she learned more about birds, she thought that was an owl sound.
This is an excellent question. They sound very similar. The very important thing is to notice the pitch. So notice in mourning doves, I'm going to play it right now. I can let me actually quickly find a great horned owl audio. So notice the pitch. In mourning owls, there's a cooing and then they rise in pitch and then go back to the same thing. With owls, it's the same. It doesn't rise in pitch. Let me play those next to each other so that you can see. This is an excellent question. Thank you for asking. So this is the mourning dove, and notice this rise in pitch in the middle. Okay, and this is the great horned owl, which is the most similar to the mourning dove. They don't rise in pitch. Okay, I thought there would be another one, but that's the main difference is the pitch. I hope that helps.
Yeah, thanks. I noticed that somebody commented that so far this spring he had only seen the male grackles, and I was wondering if you could tell us what the difference is in appearance, and that person may want to speak up. He's one of our Audubon members. If you're not sure, I know that I wasn't entirely sure there was a difference.
Yeah, the females actually, so the males have a bluish head and a brownish body. The females kind of are mostly brown. I'm not sure why he's not seeing them right now. I don't know the answer to that. Maybe let me actually share. Here we go.
Yeah, he says males arrive first.
So this is what the females look like. Their heads are not as blue. Gotcha. They're mostly brown. And I'm not sure why he's not seeing them. I don't know the answer to that.
Well, he now says males arrive first, and I wonder if maybe there were some other species, I think, where the male comes and scopes out nesting places.
I learned something new today because I did not know that males arrive first. So that's really interesting. Thank you.
That is interesting.
Yeah.
Several people, I want to say 6 or 7, did mention they would be interested in woodpeckers if we do another presentation. Someone mentioned hawks and falcons, which I think would be good because a lot of people don't even realize the difference.
I struggle with hawk and identifying hawks. It's hard. And so, yeah, that's a really interesting topic.
And I want to plug this because I know our Audubon group is very involved in bluebirds in the local area, but someone mentioned she had heard recently about the deaths of bluebirds after the severe weather and wondering how we could help bluebird populations, you know, information about bird boxes, how do we insulate them, how can we make sure that the bluebirds can get through the bad weather. So that, I know Audubon, like I say, is already doing some bluebird stuff, so hopefully.
What I'm going to do is in our follow-up email to this event, I will send a resource about just that. Does that sound good?
Yeah, that's a great idea.
That's probably much more thorough than a simple answer that I can give right now.
Good point.
Yeah.
I was going to say, I think, and then someone commented that the red-winged blackbirds do the same as the grackles, where the males come ahead. And then someone else commented, don't confuse grackles with Brewer's blackbird, which of course is much less common in Kentucky, but similar in appearance.
Yeah, very good point. They look very similar, and I did not mention them here because they're just not as common. Yes, very good point.
Someone would be interested in learning more about owl sounds. She specifically said owl night sounds.
Okay.
So yeah, I think most birds of prey are of interest to a lot of folks.
Well, that is really exciting. I'm so glad to hear about all these topics that people want to hear about. Yeah. If we don't have any more questions, I just want to say how happy I am that you all joined us. I hope you learned and got more interested in bird watching, and I just want to wish you some happy bird watching this spring. And please reach out to us if you have any questions after this webinar. Thank you
Yes,
for listening to me.
For being here, and thank you, Nora, for doing a great job, and Diane and the Paul Sawyer Library for helping us host.
Thank you to everybody for joining us. Thank you, Nora. I know I've learned a ton tonight, and I'm sure all of you have as well. Thank you, Lisa, for taking care of our chat tonight. And like Nora said, I know the library would love to partner with the Audubon Society. Again, we always love working with you all. So if you enjoyed this program and you'd be interested in seeing more, please let us know what you would like to see, and maybe we can get some more programs up as we come into the springtime. So thank you all for joining us tonight. The library, of course, we are open now, limited hours for walk-in access, but all of our programming is still virtual. But we have a variety of programming going on virtually for all ages. So please do check into that. Check on our website, on our Facebook. We have a lot of neat springtime type programming coming up just next week. Phil Case will be doing a program on planting by the signs. So if you're interested in gardening, you might check that out. We'll be having some other some interesting crafts and things coming up too. We always have our discussion groups, of course. So please do check out our other programming. We'd love to have you join us again. Thanks again to everybody for being here tonight. Thank you, Nora. Thank you, Lisa. And we look forward to seeing you at the library or at a library program in the very near future. Thank you all so very much.
Fine.